If you're looking for a stitch that looks like you did some hand quilting, look no further than your menu D in your Husqvarna Viking Designer EPIC 2. So the hand look quilt stitch is what this is called. Now on the front, totally looks like you did it by hand. On the back, well, it's going to tell that you didn't. But there is a trick to this stitch. I want to show you the tricks, show you which stitch it is, and that we do use it with the 1/4 inch foot is one way to do it, with the integrated dual feed in gauge. I do have batting in here, so it is something that you can do on a quilt, but the key is that we have clear thread in the needle of the machine. Now, if you did remember that is how we do this, when you find the stitch in your D menu, it's stitch number 2, touch the question mark and touch the stitch, and it says that it imitates the hand quilt stitch. Thread the needle with invisible thread and the bobbin with a soft cotton thread in the color to complement the quilt. So this pink thread here is actually my bobbin thread, and the clear thread is what is showing, well, sort of showing, which is separating the stitches that are, so it looks like it's done by hand. So that's the concept of it, but I do know this is a manipulated stitch. So if you are finding that this is not like turning out perfect, you may need to adjust your thread you're using or even adjust the tension. And to get this, I actually did bring it up a little bit higher, but I'm going to back it down to tension originally is 6.0. So when the top tension, which is what I'm adjusting here, is tight, it pulls the bobbin thread to the top of the fabric, which on a normal day is not what we want. But I am sure that there was some person years ago that had their tensions all mucked up. They had clear thread in their machine, and they realized that they had a stitch that kind of looked by hand, like it looks like by hand. And you find that they have integrated this stitch onto many of the sewing machines these days. So let's go ahead and see how this stitch actually stitches out, because I think you'll be amazed of how this is actually stitched to create this unique look. So I will give you a little bit of recommendation that the first couple stitches usually don't pull the bobbin thread up immediately. So if you can plan for that or place them in an area that you don't need stitched, and it'd be okay if there was a little gap until that stitch actually starts to come up. I'm going to go ahead and sew at a very kind of short or slower speed. So you're going to see that it does little tiny stitches and then it jumps forward. Little tiny stitches and then a jump forward. And let me see if I'm actually getting, oh yeah, you know what? I really didn't need to adjust that tension when I did, but it did and still does look really good as it pulls that bobbin thread up where those little tiny stitches take place. And then it jumps forward and then does little tiny stitches, but they're so tight, meaning strong on the top. That's you're seeing the bobbin thread being dragged to the top of the fabric. And that's what gives you that particular look. So once again, that first kind of stitch and a half does not take until you get a little further in and it can pull that bobbin thread up appropriately. So like I said, it's a manipulated stitch. It can change and might need some other adjustments. I've had changes with batting. Some battings have reacted slightly different, not give it a totally pulled up stitch. So give it a little test practice, which is what I did on some other fabric before I stitched, and then see what it takes to get that particular look. So remember, clear thread, quality clear thread, or monofilament thread, or a nylon thread, those are all kind of different names for the same thing. Make sure that that thread is also a smooth, thin, and pliable thread for this particular technique.